All right, so our next president is Woodrow Wilson from 1913 to 1921. He was the 28th president of the United States. Under his administration, the 17th Amendment was ratified. During this time, Germany and Europe was at war. And what was going on is people were looking for the United States to enter the war on either side. And Wilson took what many people call the high road, and said that the U.S. declared neutrality, saying that we were isolationists, that we had our own problems to deal with, that he really didn't want us to go to Europe's war. The thing that really gets us into war is the sinking of the Lusitania. This was a passenger liner that was torpedoed by a German U-boat, and this is really what kind of opens the American people's eyes on what's really going on in Europe.
Okay, so like you said, after the sinking of the ship, the U.S. really had no choice but to enter the war. After his re-election in 1917, the U.S. entered the war officially, World War I. Also, one could argue that they entered the war because the Russians got out of the war in that year. So after the war, the U.S. was in a big economic boom. Wilson had these things, the League of Nations and the 14 points. The League of Nations was kind of a foreshadow to the UN. It was more along the lines of a world order where people could come to resolve their differences instead of fighting it out in a war. And his 14 points were the things to do to Germany after the war. Some people thought that they should be harsh on Germany. Wilson took a more lenient view that they should not be as harsh on Germany. And one of his other foreign policy things was he treated Latin America as equal. He thought that the regimes in Latin America should be not picked upon as like Theodore Roosevelt would have did in an imperialist view. So when the U.S. entered the war, 13 Latin American nations followed us into the war. So now we're going to grade Woodrow Wilson. Nick, what would you give?
B.
Why?
Because he because he was able to he was able to make the stepping stones for peace around.
Okay, Lee, what would you give?
A minus.
Why?
Cause he created the 14 points and yeah.
Okay, good reason.
Okay, I'm going to give him a B because I think that he did a great job with keeping America out of World War I for as long as he could, but I do feel that he did take isolationism a little too far. As for the Latin American, I like the equality idea, but I do not like the idea that he was kind of willing to let them follow the United States into World War I.
Okay.
I would give him a B+.
Why?
I think that he did what he thought was right, and I think that for the times that staying out of the war was probably the best thing. But I think after the sinking of the Lusitania, I think that was really the appropriate time to enter the war.
Okay, I would give him a B also. I think he did a very good job leading the U.S. into World War I as a whole. My problem with them is after the war, the League of Nations and the 14 points, I think one has a really valid argument that those two things led to World War II and led to Adolf Hitler assuming power and a dictatorship in Germany. So that's why I would take him down a little bit. Mr. Hamer?
I'll give him a B+.
Why?
Because you did such a good job of selling.
Okay, so overall, after our grades, we will give Woodrow Wilson a